With so much drama in the LBC, it's kinda hard being a Snoop Dogg Double G. But I somehow, someway, keep coming up with funky ass ish like every single day. G's up, hoes down, while you motherfuckers bounce to this.
Rolling down the street, smoking Mendo, sipping on gin and juice.
With my mind on my money and my money on my mind.
If we're being very honest, if we go back to the WCW Nitro days, I'm not sure many people would have thought that one day Eddie Guerrero would win the WWF or WWE Championship. Guerrero was an extremely entertaining performer inside the ring, and he was putting a lot of the uppercard guys to shame with his work, but his early presentation in WCW kinda made Eddie come across like a guy who would never break into the main event scene. Guerrero did have some pretty notable big matches early on, including a pay-per-view bout with Nature Boy Ric Flair, but on the grand scheme of things, Eddie would find a home on WCW's mid-card and WCW's Cruiserweight division. Eddie's WCW heel turn went a very long way in showing us that Eddie Guerrero had character. Time and time again, we see excellent in-ring wrestlers who are held back by their mic skills or their ability to connect with fans through their persona, but Eddie knocked it out of the park as a villain, and this helped in making more people pay attention to Guerrero. Still, WCW had that glass ceiling for wrestlers like Guerrero, and so Eddie and a few other WCW guys made the jump to the WWF, with a key reason being their lack of a substantial push in WCW, among other things. Even when Eddie first made his WWF debut, taking away the fact that he suffered an injury very early on, it was still difficult to see him as a future world champion. And again, this isn't to say Eddie didn't have what it took, but when you've got guys like Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker and Mick Foley at the top of the ladder, then you can see how breaking into that main event scene was maybe just as difficult as it was back in WCW. That being said, opportunities seemed more plentiful in the WWF. Guerrero was able to show his character a whole lot more when he got paired up with Chyna, something many other superstars would either fail to do or simply refuse to do. And then Eddie Guerrero would truly get a chance to shine when the company decided to split into two separate brands, Raw and Smackdown. Although Eddie was gone from the WWE when the first brand split happened, and although he was initially part of the Raw brand upon his 2002 return, Eddie would end up moving to SmackDown with Chris Benoit in August, and it was from this point on where Eddie Guerrero really came into his own as a WWE superstar. Eddie became part of the fabled SmackDown 6, a group of guys who were credited for raising the bar and carrying the blue brand during this time period. Eddie Guerrero, Chavo Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Rey Mysterio, Edge and Kurt Angle were tearing it up week after week, and their efforts didn't go unnoticed by WWE fans. The SmackDown brand became the destination for incredible matches, and Eddie truly helped to make SmackDown a must-see weekly television show. It was truly the glory days of the brand. Finally, after a ton of entertaining matches, a ton of entertaining promos and segments, Eddie got his chance to win the WWE title, and it was all thanks to his efforts on SmackDown, and this is going to be the subject for today's upload. This video looking at Eddie Guerrero's WWE title victory was requested by Patreon supporter Brett Storm. While fans who watched Eddie Guerrero in WCW knew that he was a special talent, it took casual WWE fans a little longer to realise how good Latino he truly was. The Chyna and Eddie relationship sure did help, but Eddie and Chavo Guerrero's Los Guerreros tag team went a long way in helping more people warm up to Eddie, and even long-time Guerrero fans got a kick out of the tag team during 2003. A series of vignettes aired that would show Chavo and Eddie lying, cheating and stealing that people really enjoyed. And also, fans loved seeing how Eddie and Chavo would cheat their way to victories inside the ring. Week in and week out, Eddie would come up with new funny ways to cheat in matches, and the cheating that Eddie would take part in only made him a more likeable character. He was devious, yet very creative when coming up with ways to win matches. Add in the fact that Eddie Guerrero was one of the absolute best wrestlers the company had at the time, and it was just a complete recipe for success. timing was everything here too. In the beginning of 2004, a lot of things were going on that resulted in doors being opened for Eddie. From the uncertain future of the WWE Champion on Smackdown, to the decision to move Chris Benoit over to Raw. The Smackdown brand itself was going to look a little different after WrestleMania 20, and so Eddie Guerrero found himself getting one of the biggest opportunities of his career. Eddie wrote in his book, "If someone had told me that I was going to be the standard bearer for World Wrestling Entertainment, the biggest and best wrestling company on the planet, I would never have believed it. In fact, I didn't believe it when WWE CEO Vince McMahon first told me that he was planning on awarding me the belt. Nobody, not even myself, had ever seen me as a main eventer, as a guy who could be trusted to represent the best a wrestling promotion has to offer. It was Vince, God bless him, who really believed in me, and his faith in me gave me the confidence to go out and give Brock Lesnar the match of my life." Los Guerreros began their breakup angle towards the end of 2003, and Eddie felt it was absolutely the right thing to do. He and Chavo had been pitching the idea of breaking up to Vince McMahon for a few months, but Vince kept the team going. Finally though, the Chavo vs Eddie match was able to take place on pay-per-view, and it happened at the 2004 Royal Rumble. Chavo Classic had been brought in for a brief time to take part in the angle, so Eddie was going to have to deal with both his older brother and his little nephew. Still, Eddie won the match, and the crowd cheered as Eddie attacked Chavo Classic and Chavo Jr. after the bout. Later on in the evening, SmackDown's Chris Benoit entered the Royal Rumble match at number 1, and he won the whole thing, meaning Chris had earned a spot in the WrestleMania main event. Benoit surprised everyone when he showed up the next night on Monday Night Raw to announce he wanted to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship, effectively moving Benoit over to the Raw brand. SmackDown then needed a number 1 contender for the WWE Championship, and so on January 29th, 2004 on UPN, a special 15-man Royal Rumble took place, with the winner getting a shot at Brock Lesnar's championship at the No Way Out pay-per-view. There were some big names in here, including a fast-rising John Cena, Kurt Angle, and the man who finished second in the Royal Rumble on Sunday, The Big Show. But in the end, and to the shock of many in attendance and watching at home, Eddie Guerrero was able to win the SmackDown Royal Rumble. It came down to Guerrero and Kurt Angle, and the reaction Guerrero got when he won the match was absolutely incredible. The thing is, Eddie now had to go up against the unstoppable Brock Lesnar at No Way Out. Lesnar had made easy work of Bob Holly at the 2004 Royal Rumble, and it's not like fans were used to seeing Eddie getting title shots on pay-per-view. Many thought it was a foregone conclusion that Guerrero was simply a bump on Brock Lesnar's road to WrestleMania. We don't know for sure when Lesnar told the WWE that he was quitting the company after Mania 20, but what we do know is that Lesnar had gotten himself involved in a rivalry with Bill Goldberg, a superstar who competed on Raw. Brock vs Goldberg was going to happen at WrestleMania 20, and due to this contest being an inter-branded matchup, it made sense to take the belt away from Brock in the run-up to Mania. There's every possibility that Brock let Vince McMahon know about his intentions to leave the company at the beginning of the year, but we don't know for sure, and the reason why I point this out is because some believe Guerrero wouldn't have won the championship if Brock Lesnar had stayed in the WWE. I'm not so sure about that statement though. Lesnar vs Goldberg had been building up since November of 2003, and a Raw vs SmackDown match like this normally wouldn't feature the WWE title on the line. So who knows? Regardless, Eddie was told by Vince McMahon that he was going to win the championship at No Way Out, and Eddie didn't believe McMahon at first. Eddie wrote in his book, "I was shocked. All I had ever wanted was to come back and wrestle in WWE for one more opportunity to give my best. I had not the slightest thought of actually becoming the champion. I'm not trying to sound humble, I honestly never imagined the possibility. Even as I thanked Vince, I didn't really believe it was ever going to actually happen. Not that Vince didn't mean what he'd said, it's just that I've been in this business for a long time. I've had promoters tell me all kinds of things, and if I've learned one lesson, it's that things change." No Way Out was scheduled for February 15th at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. That gave us 3 short weeks to build towards the pay-per-view. Those weeks were an opportunity for me to mainline my work and show off what I can do. I immediately started working with Brock Lesnar, which was a total change of pace from working with Chavito. Working with Chavito wasn't easy, but it was comfortable. Being in the ring with Brock pushed me to work on another level. I had to dig deep and find a strength I didn't know I had. I owe Brock a lot. He went out there and busted his ass for me. I'll always love him for that. And so Eddie and Brock would begin working with each other not only on Smackdown but on house shows. The two men shared a ring together 5 times at live shows in order to get acquainted with each other, trying to quickly find chemistry that for some could take months or even years. But let's take a look at how the story unfolded on Smackdown, a story that only unfolded over the course of 2 episodes. The week after winning the Smackdown Royal Rumble, Eddie Guerrero had an in-ring interview with Michael Cole. And before Eddie got a chance to speak, Brock Lesnar showed up. Michael Cole gets out of the ring and the fans begin chanting Eddie's name. Brock congratulates Eddie for his big victory last week, but Lesnar reminds Guerrero that Brock Lesnar has beaten Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, The Rock and Kurt Angle, just to name a few. And Lesnar will have no problem taking care of Goldberg soon also if he decides to show up at No Way Out. Steve Austin had given Goldberg a front row ticket to the event, so in short, with this kind of resume, Brock Lesnar isn't afraid of Eddie Guerrero. Guerrero's impressed by Brock's list of victories. If Eddie had that same kind of resume, he wouldn't be afraid of Eddie Guerrero either. As the crowd continues to chant for Eddie, Guerrero says he doesn't have a long list of accomplishments like Brock Lesnar, but he does have something going for him. Eddie says he's overcome every obstacle put in front of him and he done that by not listening to people like Brock Lesnar. Eddie was told because he's smaller he'll never win the big one. Eddie was told the demons he battles every day are too strong and he'll never beat them. He'll never see his kids again. And just talking about these problems makes Eddie lose it and drop the microphone. Eddie picks the mic back up and he tells Brock he's beating those demons, he's overcoming those obstacles. And when Eddie looks at Brock Lesnar, he hears all those voices telling him that he can't do it. He can't overcome the odds. Eddie sees a face of hatred when he looks at Lesnar. Eddie sees his next obstacle when he looks at Lesnar. And at No Way Out, Lesnar won't be facing Eddie Guerrero. Brock's going to face all the battles within Eddie Guerrero. The fire that burns within. Brock Lesnar is going to face Latino heat. Brock then tells Eddie that he's a no one. Clearly, Lesnar didn't hear a single word of what Guerrero just said. And so Eddie loses it and he beats the hell out of Brock. Brock gets out of the ring and he leaves his WWE title behind. Eddie picks it up and he tries it on for size. And yeah, that title belt looked pretty good around the waist of Eddie Guerrero. Before we look at next week's Smackdown event, Eddie said in his book that he began doing a ton of promotion for No Way Out and apparently it was Eddie's idea to promote heavily in the Hispanic market. Vince thought this was a good idea, allowing Eddie to focus a ton of promotional work to the Latino WWE audience. And so every day that Eddie wasn't inside the ring, he was off doing TV interviews on the Telemundo network, the Univision network, and Eddie took part in radio and newspaper interviews targeted towards Latino wrestling fans. It paid off, by the way, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Next up was the February 12th episode of Smackdown, and the threat of Goldberg showing up at No Way Out was beginning to get at Brock Lesnar. Brock said once Guerrero gets taken care of, he's going to destroy Lesnar. Maybe Brock was underestimating Eddie Guerrero here. Kurt Angle was scheduled to team up with Eddie to face Lesnar and Big Show in the main event. Someone jumped Kurt Angle, so now Eddie had a big problem, but we'll come back to the match in a moment. A little later on, a mariachi band played music in the ring as Michael Cole and Taz sounded confused on commentary. Out comes Brock Lesnar dancing, wearing a sombrero and making a complete fool of himself. Although when Brock Lesnar does stuff like this, the comedic value multiplies by about 10,000. And before people complain that this was stereotyping, yes it was, but that was the whole point. Brock continues to dance inside the ring and Taz tries to sing along on commentary. Senior Brock then tells the band to stop playing, and then he explains himself. He's throwing a celebration party for Eddie Guerrero. Lesnar says because Eddie will have nothing to celebrate this week at No Way Out, there might as well be a celebration tonight for Eddie. Guerrero runs down as the band begins to play again. Eddie clears the ring and Brock tells Eddie to calm down, it's just a celebration. Brock says he paid good money for this party and the band had to swim a long way to be here tonight. This actually makes Guerrero laugh. Brock reminds Eddie that he doesn't have a tag team partner tonight, but Brock knows Eddie's a fighter. He'll still go down swinging in tonight's main event. Lesnar then calls Eddie an addict. Guys like Brock have to work for everything they have in order to be successful, whereas guys like Guerrero want to take it all away, and they do that through gaining sympathy. Brock says Eddie is addicted to losing, and at No Way Out, Eddie's gonna get his fix. Eddie says if Brock wants to talk about addictions, then let's talk about it honestly and straight. 3 years ago in a locker room in Minneapolis, Eddie Guerrero was wasted. Eddie doesn't remember much of that night, but he does remember getting carried out of the arena and straight into rehab. Eddie says he lost everything. He lost his job, he lost his wife, he lost his kids, and he lost himself. Eddie got to the point where it was do or die. He had to make a decision, and Brock only needs to look in front of him to see that Eddie is standing right there. Day by day, Eddie earned the respect of his kids again. Eddie earned his life back, and that championship around Brock's waist symbolizes an apology. Guerrero can say he's sorry by winning the championship and providing a better life for his family. Eddie says he is an addict. He's addicted to the do or die feeling he's gonna have at No Way Out, and he'll do anything it takes to take the WWE Championship away from Brock Lesnar. An absolutely incredible promo here on Smackdown, one of Eddie Guerrero's best. I legitimately got excited for Eddie while watching this back. Eddie still had a problem though. Kurt Angle wasn't able to compete in the main event. It looked like Big Show and Lesnar were going to rip Eddie apart in a 2-on-1 match, but then John Cena came out and Cena teamed up with Guerrero. This match gave Brock and Eddie a chance to work together while the cameras were rolling, and the match ended with Guerrero using Cena's chain to hit a low blow on the WWE Champion. Guerrero then successfully pinned Brock Lesnar to end Smackdown. Because Eddie got a pinfall victory here, I remember thinking that Lesnar was going to end up winning at No Way Out, but I was totally wrong. After watching Eddie Guerrero for years and years, it was finally time to see Latino Heat win the WWE Championship, and it happens in a match that really could give you goosebumps. Eddie wrote on the day of the show that only around 80% of tickets had sold out, but a massive amount of walk-up tickets ended up getting sold on the day of the show, and many of these fans in attendance were Hispanic. Guerrero felt proud that his work promoting the event had paid off. Guerrero said that the stage was moved back a little in order to accommodate more seats, so the show was a complete sellout with many getting turned away. I also understand too that these WWE books can exaggerate a little and they don't go through much of a vetting process, but I don't care. It's still a great story, it's still Eddie's story, so I'm sticking with it. In the middle of the show, Goldberg was seen sitting in the audience. Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar came out and Lesnar provoked Goldberg. This resulted in Brock taking a jackhammer and Goldberg getting himself arrested, meaning that Bill wouldn't be able to interfere in any way during the main event, or at least that's what we thought. As Eddie drives into the arena for the big match, Michael Cole says this could be a day of redemption for Guerrero, a day of reckoning, a day where Eddie finds a way out. The reaction Eddie gets is absolutely ridiculous. He takes the time to jump back up onto the turnbuckles when the crowd chants his name, and you can just feel that tonight may be different. Maybe Eddie really was going to win the championship tonight on pay-per-view. Brock overpowers Eddie at the beginning of the match, but Eddie shows heart by running straight back into his opponent, and after Eddie gets pushed down again, Latino Heat screams, "Let's get high," before locking up with Brock Lesnar once again. From here, Lesnar shows off his brute strength. This is what Eddie has to try to overcome during this match, but every time Eddie gets a little hope, Lesnar shuts him right back down. There's a spot early on where Eddie nearly gets dropped on his head. It looks pretty brutal, but thankfully Guerrero was okay. From here, it's complete destruction. Eddie keeps trying to fire up, but Brock is unstoppable. Guerrero gets thrown around the ring like he's nothing, and eventually, Brock throws Guerrero out and he won't let him back in. Guerrero outsmarts Lesnar here and Brock ends up getting his leg smashed into the ring post. creating a much needed opening for Guerrero. Eddie tries it one more time and this was a mistake. Guerrero gets pulled into the ring post, and so the destruction continues when the match gets back in the ring. A dropkick to Brock's knee gives Eddie a little bit of hope, but it doesn't last too long. Lesnar fires back with a German suplex that leads to the back of Eddie's head slamming to the mat. But then Eddie builds some real momentum when Lesnar goes for a knee in the corner and Eddie ducks out of the way. Brock's knee becomes the main target. A tired Eddie Guerrero keeps the pressure on by going after the weakened body part, and the fans begin rallying behind the challenger. The crowd gets excited when Guerrero applies an STF, and when Brock doesn't give up, Guerrero continues going after the knee. Brock tries to fend off the attack from Eddie, but it looks like Eddie has a real chance here. Guerrero keeps Brock on the mat and he tries a few times to apply a figure 4, but the power of Lesnar stops Eddie from locking it in. And then Brock surprises Eddie with a belly-to-belly suplex. Guerrero shows he isn't out yet when he performs a tilt-a-whirl head scissors on the Beast. Eddie finally applies the figure 4 and the crowd begin to stand up. The hold stays locked in for an extended period of time, but Lesnar's able to grab the bottom rope. Eddie's convinced that he can make Lesnar submit, so he goes back to the STF. Lesnar manages to power out, and again, a German suplex puts Eddie on the mat. Guerrero then takes a hard spinebuster from the WWE Champion, and things aren't looking as good as they did a few minutes ago. Lesnar applies a sleeper and Guerrero has to fight his way out. Both men look completely spent at this point, but Guerrero won't give up. Eddie gets out by throwing Brock into the second turnbuckle, and the impact leads to Lesnar getting a busted nose. Eddie then goes upstairs for a top rope dropkick, but Brock moves out of the way. After taking a suplex, Eddie is put into a gut wrench hold and Lesnar doesn't want to let go. Brock squeezes hard around Eddie's torso while also hitting a gut wrench suplex in the middle of the hold. The commentators mention the look in Eddie's eyes as he somehow gets back to his feet. A series of headbutts is enough to make Brock release the hold, and Eddie again goes after the knee to bring Lesnar down a few notches. A head scissors from Eddie Guerrero gets followed up with a Three Amigos attempt, and Eddie hits all 3 suplexes. Eddie feels it, he wants to end the match, he goes up for the frog splash, the crowd goes nuts, but Eddie fails to land his finisher. It's at this point where everyone thinks they know the outcome. Lesnar is going to once again successfully defend his WWE title. Brock scoops Eddie up for the F5, Guerrero takes the finisher, but the referee gets knocked out also. Lesnar pins Guerrero, but there's no one there to make the count, so Brock decides to finish Eddie off by using the WWE title as a weapon. Out of nowhere, Bill Goldberg appears in the ring, and Brock takes a spear while the crowd again go crazy. How Goldberg got back into the arena is anyone's guess, but that doesn't matter. Maybe Eddie has another chance. This has to be it. Eddie pins Brock and... You now start to think again that Brock's gonna win. You have that feeling that No Way Out may end in disappointment. Eddie sees the championship belt and he picks it up. He lines up his shot, but Brock Lesnar ducks out of the way and Eddie gets lifted up for another F5. Only this time Eddie pulls off a DDT reversal. This is it, the last chance. Eddie throws the belt out of the ring, he climbs up to the top rope, and he hits the frog splash. The place erupts when the match comes to an end. Eddie Guerrero had done it. Eddie Guerrero was the new WWE Champion. It's a great moment in wrestling history. Someone who truly deserved a run at the top, winning the championship. Eddie celebrates with his fans and he celebrates with his family. Michael Cole talks about having goosebumps and chills as Eddie Guerrero just achieved the unthinkable. The theme here was redemption, Eddie turning it all around and taking his place in history. And when you watch this all back, you just can't help but smile as Eddie celebrates and dances while holding the WWE title. It's a fantastic way to end this pay-per-view, and it also meant that Eddie would get a chance to defend the championship at WrestleMania, but that's a story for another time. That's going to do it for today's video, but I want to leave you with another quote from Eddie's book where he talks about how he felt after the match. Thanks for watching, guys. I climbed out of the audience and headed up the ramp. I reached the stage and got down to my knees. First I thanked God, then I looked up toward heaven and said, "This one's for you, Dad." It was something I always wanted to do. I'd only ever dedicated a match to my father once before at a tribute event held right after he passed away. In my heart, I knew how proud he would have been to see me reach this place in the business. I was the first Guerrero to compete for the world title since my dad's 1954 match against Lou Thez. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I was on too much of a high. That might be the one time I can remember that my not sleeping came from feeling good.
With so much drama in the LBC, it's kinda hard being a Snoop D-O double G that I somehow, some way keep coming up with funky ass shit like every single day.
Everybody in the game.
With my mind on my money and my money on my mind.
Rolling down the street, smoking Indo, sipping on gin and juice.
Laid back.
With my mind on my money and my money on my mind.
Rolling down the street, smoking Indo, sipping on gin and juice.